All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm trying to get this one out to you early because I know you've got studying for your test to do. There is no other homework tonight other than this online lecture, unless something goes terribly wrong in class today. So I'll keep it short, I'll keep it simple. Basically, you have a couple jobs to do. You're going to write in the definitions and important details. You're going to draw diagrams of some of these states, and you're going to, on that packet or on that sheet I give you today, but then the other thing you're going to do is find another example. So one thing I'm going to ask you to do is tell me an example of, let's say, a landlocked state that is not one that I gave you. So you're going to have to open your phone, open your map, use your Chromebook to go through the earth and find some countries that match the shapes that we have. So remember, you're writing definitions, important details. You're going to draw an example of each one or some sort of diagram. It doesn't have to be a real life example. And at the end of each one, you're going to find, draw, and tell me a real life example of each thing. And what we should know is that it's called morphology. And basically what it means is that the shapes of states matter. And the first one we're going to take a look at is called a compact state. And you may think compact means small, and you would be wrong. Basically, a compact state is any state that is more or less equidistant from the center to all parts. So if you take a look over here at France, you can see that from the center, it's more or less the same distance to the edges of France. Is it a little different? Yeah. Poland is probably the best example of this. It's like pretty much as close to a circle as you can get in a state. Is that a centripetal force or a centrifugal force? Is it going to help your state or is it going to hurt your state? And to be quite honest, the answer is centripetal. There aren't a lot of cons to having a state like that. It's easier to communicate from the center. Transportation is easier. There's less outliers in culture, so there's less conflict. Doesn't necessarily mean there's not conflict. For example, Rwanda is a compact state. But that's, as we know from colonialism, it's good. It's good stuff. It really helps your country to be united. But, you know, historical factors do play a part. And actually I had a conversation with Supreet the other day after class where he was like, man, if you just knew all the history of this, you'd know all the answers. And so really geography can only teach you what you should expect, not necessarily what is always true. Now, the next one you need to know is an elongated state. Don't forget, by the way, you should have stopped the video and found an example and drawn it on your paper from a real map. So the next is called an elongated state. And you might think it means long, and it does more or less, but really it's the opposite of an opposite of this guy here. It's the opposite of our compact state. It is an elongated state, which means that the different parts of it are far away from the center. The number one example you're ever going to get is old Chile here. And Chile is super elongated. If you look at the tip down here all the way to the top near Bolivia, those people are 1,000 miles apart. So is that a centrifugal force or a centripetal force? And if you said centrifugal, you'd be right. Basically, it means the North and South are like different countries. They barely talk to each other. They have totally different cultures. They're completely isolated from one another. This can lead to a lot of things. This can lead to ethnic conflict. This can lead to breakdowns in communication and transportation. The best example is Vietnam. There was a North Vietnam and a South Vietnam. They were so different that they actually had a war with one another, a really famous war. The next one we're going to look at is prorupted. This is a really tough one that you're going to need to know. A prorupted state is basically a compact state with parts that stick out. So if you look over here at the DRC, you'll see that there's a part that sticks out into the Atlantic Ocean. If you look at Thailand, it's pretty much compact, except it sticks out there. Afghanistan, too, look pretty much circular in that little tail. Tennessee would be a great example. And it's often those little tails, those proruptions, are usually made for access to resources or control over a resource. Thailand wanted to gain control of the Gulf of Thailand. Afghanistan wanted access to Turkey. I'm sorry, not Turkey, India. That wanted access to India, so that little proruption goes over there. And you can see the Congo is just trying to touch the ocean somehow. So don't forget to find an example. You're going to see a lot of examples of these when you're looking on your map. And sometimes they're made to separate rival states. They kind of act as a wall between other forces. The other thing you're going to need is perforated states. And if you know what a perforation is, that's a hole that separates your paper. It's a state with holes. It's your Swiss cheese state. So if you look at South Africa here, it's a perforated state. There's a whole other country right in the middle of it. Is this a centrifugal force or a centripetal force? It really depends. If you are the enclave, which is the next word you need to know, which is the surrounded area in a perforated state, that's called an enclave. Wow, that might be a centripetal force if you are saying like, we're all surrounded, we have to work together. But it also cuts you off from trade. You might be in a constant state of battle with the people around you. If you have a different culture smack dab in the middle of your country, that could lead to some issues within your country as well. It's like, well, heck, I'm just going to move next door to Lesotho, right? Or sorry, Lesotho. I don't know how to say that country's name. I'm just going to move. So it might be an issue for those people as well. So you need to know a perforated state is a state with a different country in it, and an enclave is a state that is in a different country. It's the holes in the Swiss cheese. And then you need to know fragmented states. To me, this one makes perfect sense. It's a state made up of fragmented pieces that are separated by water. Look at Indonesia. What a perfect example. There are hundreds of states. Don't forget to find examples other than Indonesia. There are hundreds of parts of the state. Is this a centripetal force? No way. This is a huge centrifugal force. It is hard to keep a nation together when everyone has their own island. It's hard to communicate. It's hard to send goods. It's hard to trade. So really, it's not good if your country is separated out and fragmented like that by water. Now, if it is separated by different countries, that's what's called an exclave. And an exclave, a great example, is Russia. And that's when it's not surrounded by water, but surrounded by other states. If you look at Kaliningrad in Russia, it's over here by Lithuania. It's surrounded by countries, not by water, and that's called an exclave. America is an exclave state because Alaska is not touching it, and it is surrounded by another country, not just water, whereas Hawaii would be part of a fragmented state. So you can see how we are both, not each of these falls into a perfect definition. And then there's landlocked states, and this is going to be a really important historical issue. And landlocked states are, as you would expect, states that are completely surrounded by other states with no access to the ocean. This is huge. There are so many countries that have been landlocked, and then they don't have access to trade, which means they don't have access to technology or development or anything unless their neighbors help them, which is why so many people try to extend their country to trade routes or ocean access. It hinders international trade. It really causes a lot of issues. You're going to be always fighting other countries for access to that ocean. You're going to be constantly in battle with trade, because why would I trade with Ethiopia if I could trade with Somalia, and they're so much easier to get to? And that's it. Those are the terms you need to know. There will be a little quizzy poo tomorrow. I'm going to show you some different states. You're going to need to know what they are. You're going to need to tell me an example other than the one I'm showing you of that state. So be ready for that. I hope you guys are having a good day. See ya.